All right, moving on to the last segment of today's show. It is time for my Week 3 NFL picks. And I told you guys last week, after a bad Week 1, went 7-9, I was really hoping last week to make a mark and have a good and successful week picking winners on this show. And last week, that's exactly what happened. The picks went 14-2. We called the Raiders pulling the upset over the Saints. We called the Colts in a 50-50 game with the Minnesota Vikings. The only two games we got wrong were Philadelphia. I had them beating the Rams. Unfortunately, Carson Wentz just isn't very good right now. And Houston, the Texans, I had them beating Baltimore. Lamar Jackson and company were able to just dominate that game and get the job done. But every other game I was able to get right, and I'm hoping this week with just a ton of loaded games on the schedule to continue that. So without further ado, here we go. Thursday Night Football, the 0-2 Miami Dolphins will head to Jacksonville to take on the 1-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. Right now, the Jaguars stand as a 3-point favorite. And for me, the Jacksonville Jaguars are the team I'm going to take to win this game for a couple reasons. Number one, they just have the better quarterback, I think. Gardner Minshew has been very impressive to start this season. And a Jaguar team that so far this season, they've outscored their opponents 55-53. And keep in mind, this is a team that most people expected in the beginning of the season were just going to tank. There's no better example of just how weird 2020 has been than the fact that most people are going to be laying a field goal here with the Jaguars, I feel like. And I actually feel pretty confident in this pick. Gardner Minshew's playing well. James Robinson had a 100-yard game last week. Hopefully DJ Chark will be healthy and ready to go. He's right now questionable. The Dolphins right now, even though they ended their season very well last year, they kind of look like a work in progress to me, dealing with the heightened expectations. And now they're on the road on short rest. There's no reason for me to pick a Dolphin team or have any confidence in them. Tua may be the answer sooner rather than later. So I'm going to have Jacksonville getting the win over Miami on Thursday Night Football tonight. I think they cover as well. I'll go 29-20 Jags over the Dolphins. Moving on to the Sunday 1 o'clock games. How about the 2-0 Chicago Bears heading to the road to against the team we actually just discussed, the 0-2 Atlanta Falcons. Right now, the Falcons are a 3-point favorite. And keep in mind, I never feel confident betting on the Falcons. I bet against them the first 2 weeks. It obviously turned out well, but the thing is that the Falcons coming off this loss, they better be eager to play. And when you throw in the fact that even though the Chicago Bears right now are 2-0, how many other teams in the National Football League would have won their first two games on the schedule if it read at Detroit and home Giants? I would say about 20 out of the 32 teams, and Chicago hasn't really looked good doing it as they weren't able to score on the Giants. Look, I think Atlanta, as bad as their defense is, they'll have somewhat of a bounce-back game, and I think the Falcons win here. But if they lose, they're going to be in big, big trouble. And Chicago's defense on the road in a dome against this Atlanta offense, it'll be a fascinating matchup. I'm going to take the Falcons to win by exactly a field goal. I'll go 24-21. I think it's going to be a really close game, and if the Falcons somehow lose this game, they're going to be in big, big trouble. I could see Dan Quinn getting fired because it's one thing to start 1-7, win the locker room back last year. You just cannot do the same thing again the following year, and that's basically the trajectory that Dan Quinn and the Atlanta Falcons are on right now. So I have Atlanta beating Chicago. Julio Jones has a bounce-back game. That offense should hopefully for Atlanta be able to score. How about another really good 1 o'clock game? The 2-0 Las Vegas Raiders head to New England to take on the 1-1 New England Patriots. Right now, the Patriots stand at a 5.5-point favorite. And everyone is asking, are the Las Vegas Raiders finally for real? Are the Patriots still somehow for real? And for me, I have an easier time answering the question of, are the Patriots for real? Because they just went into Seattle against a very good football team on Sunday Night Football and were 1 yard away from pulling a statement victory with Cam Newton. And Belichick versus Gruden, this is going to be an awesome start, and both teams could really run the ball. The Raiders are playing well, but I think on a short week at home, the Patriots ultimately get the job done here, and I think they cover as well. I think the fact that the Raiders have trouble defending the pass game hurts them here. I think New England wins and covers. I'll take them 28-17. How about the 1-1 San Francisco 49ers heading to MetLife Stadium to take on the 0-2 New York Giants? And I think the first thing that comes to mind in this game was obviously last week, the San Francisco 49ers. They had a game at MetLife Stadium against the New York Jets, and they really were not happy with the condition of the field turf, and they just lost so many players. When you look at George Kittle and Raheem Mostert, or Kittle is going to be back, and he got hurt week 1, but Mostert got hurt. Nick Bosa got hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, so Nick Mullins actually is going to be the San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback in this game. And even the Giants, when you look at their side, Saquon Barkley out, Sterling Shepard out, Nate Solder opted out. So both of these teams are super banged up. But with George Kittle hopefully back in the fold, I think this is a game when you look at the 49ers schedule, they have to win because even though they're super banged up, they're still playing a team that they're better than. I like the Giants to cover the number of 4, but I still think San Francisco just finds a way to win outright. And I actually think like if they lose this game, they could be in really big trouble because when you look at the rest of the 49ers schedule and the injuries that they're dealing with and the fact that they play in probably the toughest division in football, look at these next couple games for the Niners. Home Philly, home Miami, home Rams. So 3 home games in a row after this, which is cool. Then at New England, at Seattle, home Green Bay, at New Orleans, at the Rams, home Buffalo, home Washington, at Dallas, at Arizona, home Seattle. That is a ridiculous schedule, and when you look at the number of injuries that this team is facing, if I'm a 49er fan, I would be a little concerned. I think they have to just find some kind of way to somehow beat the New York Giants, and I think they do that on Sunday by, I would say, 1 or 2 points. The 5th game of the week, how about a battle between 2 0-2 teams? The Cincinnati Bengals, they sit at 0-2. The Philadelphia Eagles, they sit at 0-2. Right now, the line is Philadelphia -5, and the Eagles obviously have not looked very good at all so far this season, and they've struggled, but this is a game the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be competitive in, but this is also a game I think that the Philadelphia Eagles have to win. Carson Wentz has really struggled. The offensive line has really struggled, and I still think that he's talented enough to suddenly break out of this and save his team's season against the defense that just dropped 35 points to the Browns. But the Bengals secondary has actually been improved with William Jackson, Mackenzie Alexander, Jesse Bates, and Von Bell. And I think Philly, if they want to win this game, they need to get Miles Sanders going on the ground. And I think with the home field advantage, with Miles Sanders running the ball, I think Philadelphia is able to get the win. But is Cincinnati going to cover? I think Philadelphia covers. I think they win by a touchdown. I think they finally have a game where they just say to everyone, all right, even though we're super banged up, we're the better team. And this is a game Philadelphia needs because even though their season has gotten off to an awful start, the NFC East as a whole right now just doesn't look like a very good division. So I'll always keep that option open for, okay, can a team like Philadelphia, can a team like Dallas, considering the starts that they've gotten off to? Obviously, I was thinking this during the Falcon game when the Cowboys were down 39-30 and it looked like they were going to be 0-2. But Philadelphia, this is a game they have to have. You know, they lost to the Rams at home, didn't really show up with that great of an effort. They're going to need this one. How about another 1 o'clock game? The 0-2 Houston Texans will head to Pittsburgh to take on the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think when you look at the Texans, their schedule has been very tough. I don't think anyone is denying that. But they haven't even been competitive in those 2 games. And that, for me, is a big problem. Bill O'Brien isn't using the weapons that he thought he was going to be able to replace DeAndre Hopkins with effectively. And I think when you look at Deshaun Watson and his quality of performance so far this season, it has reflected that. And the Texans, 2 losses. They came by 14 in week 1 and 17 in week 2. The Steelers, on the other hand, you guys know how I feel about their defense. I think it is the best defense in football, and I think last week, even though they showed a little bit of vulnerability with Jeff Driscoll being able to throw the ball on them, they were able to make plays when it mattered the most. Big Ben was able to get the job done, even though he did turn the ball over a couple times, and Pittsburgh was able to get the win in a game that was much closer than it should have been. I think I always, considered the possibility of Deshaun Watson just coming out, having a crazy game, and the Texans getting a victory. But with that being said, I think Juju and Deontay Johnson are getting healthier. The Steelers just look like the better team to me right now, and I'm going to take them to win and cover. I'll say 28-17. Houston just hasn't really shown me enough for me to think that they're going to go on the road to Pittsburgh and win. The next 1 o'clock game. How about the 2-0 Tennessee Titans heading on the road to Minnesota to take on the 0-2 Minnesota Vikings? Right now, Tennessee stands as a 2.5-point favorite. And I think the Vikings, they're a well-coached veteran team that made the playoffs in 2019. They're trying to save their season on Sunday against the Titans. But most people in this spot like the Titans. The Vikings' pass defense has been flat out awful, and Ryan Tannehill has actually been a little better than I expected. And if the Vikings have any shot to win this game, it comes down to this. They're going to need Kirk Cousins to play better. He has been awful the first 2 games of the season, and that's the thing with Kirk Cousins. When he's bad, he could be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and that's a huge, huge problem. Obviously, when he's on, he's much better than that and could really play, especially when you consider the passing weapons of Minnesota. But Justin Jefferson, the kid, hasn't been able to get going yet, and the Vikings, throughout their first 2 weeks, have really struggled. But with that being said, I'm actually going to pick them to get the job done here. I just can't see a Mike Zimmer coach team with this much talent on it starting 0-2, losing a home game to Ryan Tannehill. Tennessee, don't get me wrong, has been much better than I expected. And I think for now, I owe them an apology. I think they are definitely a contender to win the AFC South. But at the same time, I still don't trust them going on the road to Minnesota, facing a desperate team with talent that needs the W. I think Minnesota covers the 2.5-point spread and wins outright. The next 1 o'clock game, a battle between 2-0 teams. How about the 2-0 Los Angeles Rams heading to Buffalo to take on the 2-0 Buffalo Bills? And this is the smallest line of the week, and it's a very even matchup. I think Josh Allen and Jared Goff are both accomplished. Jared Goff is the better pure passer, Josh Allen the better runner, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Buffalo Bills here. And you guys know, if you listen to this show, I haven't been too high on the Buffalo Bills since the season started. Well, scratch that. I've been high on the Bills' surrounding team, but I'm just not very high on their quarterback. But I'll admit, on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins, that was one of the better games that I've seen Josh Allen play in terms of his pure passing. Obviously, that's against the Dolphins. If he could do it on Sunday against the Rams and their secondary and their defense, that would be a good sign. But the thing I want to see about Buffalo is this. They've looked very good in their first 2 games, but their level of competition just hasn't been good at all facing the Jets and the Dolphins. The fact that they blew both the Jets out and barely beat the Dolphins, that's a good sign and a good way to start your season when the expectations are high. But at the same time, when you look at this Buffalo Bill team, having them on the field and looking at the Rams on the other side and Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, it's interesting. Can the Buffalo Bills and their lack of, experience in big games and star power show up here? I don't know. But Sean McDermott, he's a coach that is, very often puts his team in the best position to win as possible. I think he'll come up with a good game plan. And Buffalo's looked, to me, like a little bit of a better team in week 3. So I'm going to take the Bills to beat the Rams. I think it will be a very close game, and I think the Rams are very capable to possibly win. Okay, moving on to the next game on Sunday. How about the 1-1 Washington football team heading to Cleveland to take on the 1-1 Cleveland Browns? Right now, the Browns are a 7-point favorite, and I think the Browns, it's interesting when you judge this line. I think it's about right. Maybe it should be a little lower, like 5.5, 6. But the question is this. Is Baker Mayfield going to respond again? He played pretty well in that Thursday night game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And to be honest, even though the Washington football team defense is pretty good, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect Baker Mayfield and the Browns to have another good game again. They have all the advantages in terms of their offensive skill position players and their weapons. OBJ should hopefully have a big game. And I think this could be, hopefully, for Baker Mayfield, another building step for him when you look at if Cleveland could possibly make the playoffs this year. Because once again, I think when I debated about the other teams in the AFC earlier in this podcast, right? I mentioned Kansas City. I mentioned Baltimore. I mentioned Pittsburgh. I mentioned New England. And Cleveland, in terms of pure talent on paper, I think is just as talented as those teams. The question is, are the Browns going to be able to, really prove that, like they really weren't able to do that last year? And I think in this game against the Washington football team, they will have a really good opportunity to do that. So I think the Cleveland Browns end up getting the victory here over Washington. I will say they cover as well. I'll say 30-21 final for the Browns. Let's go to the 4 o'clock games. How about the 0-2 New York Jets heading to Indianapolis to take on the 1-1 Indianapolis Colts? And right now, Indianapolis is a 10.5-point favorite. And a lot of times, it's interesting because people like to fade the heavy public favorites like the Indianapolis Colts are this week. But I feel like the Jets have no shot here. I mean, maybe the Jets have somewhat of a chance to be a little more productive in this game than they have over the last couple weeks. But the Colts beat the Minnesota Vikings by 17. I know they had a hiccup against Jacksonville in week 1. I hate to say it. The Colts are just the better, more talented team here. And I think they win by a final score of 30-13. The Jets haven't shown any ability at all to really show anyone that they could compete in these kind of games, and it's super unfortunate because I'll say it once, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I think Sam Darnold is a talented quarterback, and realistically, I think with good coaching and a good surrounding cast of weapons, I actually think he could be a good, solid, productive quarterback in this league. The problem is when you look at the New York Jets and how exactly that they've built this franchise since Sam Darnold has gotten there, it really hasn't been ideal. They decided to fire their GM Mike McCagnon the May right after he had spent all of the money on the biggest free agent to many in New York Jets history. And I think when you look at the New York Jets, their team has kind of just been going downhill since there. Indianapolis is another team that I feel like could find themselves back in the playoff race in terms of who are the good teams in the AFC just after their week 1 loss to Jacksonville. It's going to take them they're going to have to show me a little more until they can firmly cement themselves back in that conversation. But I do think when you look at the Indianapolis Colts, they're a solid football team, and they should be able to get the win over the Jets on Sunday. How about the other 4:05 game? The 0-2 Carolina Panthers will head to LA to take on the 1-1 Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chargers right now are a 6.5-point favorite. Justin Herbert really played well last week, nearly led the Chargers to a win over the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, and it was announced that Tyrod Taylor is actually going to be out for the next couple weeks, and Justin Herbert is going to be getting the start here. I think when you look at the game last week, the fact that Justin Herbert played really well on freaking 10 seconds notice, he deserves a lot of credit for that. And that's against the defending Super Bowl champions, almost outdueling Patrick Mahomes in a big game in your first career start. Now the stakes are a little less. They're playing Carolina. They're at home. Shouldn't be much pressure. Joey Bosa should hopefully play. Casey Hayward, Chris Harris, and Desmond King will all be in the lineup as well. And I think ultimately that's really going to help the Chargers here. The Chargers could still be a playoff team. It's going to be interesting to see if Justin Herbert wins a game or two for them, if they're going to roll with him, or when Tyrod is healthy, are they going to go back? It's going to be interesting to see, but Carolina just hasn't really shown me anything to make me pick them to go on the road to beat the Los Angeles Chargers. I have the Carolina Panthers. McCaffrey's out too. That obviously hurts. Maybe DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson will be able to get something going, but I don't see anything really. I think the Chargers win and cover the spread. I'll say they beat Carolina. I'll go 25-10. The next 4 o'clock game, how about the 0-2 Detroit Lions heading to Arizona to take on the 2-0 Arizona Cardinals? And when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, they've been, to some people, one of the biggest surprises in football this season. But if you've listened to this show, you guys know I was very high on this Arizona Cardinal team in the preseason. So high that I actually predicted Kyler Murray in the preseason to win MVP. And I really hope he could do that. And he's gotten off to a really good start. I would say him and probably Russell Wilson are the 2 front runners right now. But Arizona's been playing really well. It's one thing to go on the road to San Francisco and win. That was obviously a really impressive effort by the Cardinals in week 1, but they really impressed me last week when they beat up on the Washington football team. And even though when you look at Washington and the talent level, when you compare them and Arizona's talent is clearly better. But at the same time, I do think that Arizona deserves credit when you're a team like that who's kind of unproven and you're right away in week 2 of the season facing a game where everyone is expecting you to win, and it was never in doubt for Arizona. I think when you look at them in this spot against Detroit, it's a similar test. Right now, I think we could all agree the Detroit Lions do not look like a very good football team, and they had their opportunities in week 1. It obviously didn't happen, and they really didn't come ready to play at all in week 2. I would really want a better effort from this Detroit Lion team, but with the way everything's been going recently with Matt Patricia and them, I could easily see in Matt Patricia this being his last year in Detroit. Detroit needs to start winning games. Last year, Detroit went to Arizona, played a good game, but had a big lead, blew it, and the game ultimately ended in a tie. That was actually the first start of the career for Kyler Murray, and it's going to be interesting to see what DeAndre Hopkins could do against this depleted Detroit Lions secondary. So I'll have Arizona winning. I'll have them covering as well, but when you look at it, it's going to be interesting to see how exactly Arizona does, because this is such a fun team. Their defense, I think, is underrated. I think for some people it was actually a concern going into the season, but I think it's one of the more underrated units in the league behind Chandler Jones. So I will have Arizona winning over Detroit. The 1-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers will head to Denver to take on the 0-2 Denver Broncos. Right now, Tampa Bay sits as a 6-point favorite. And I think it's very unfortunate what's happened here with Denver. Drew Lock, it's unfortunate. I was really looking forward to see him play this season, and the injuries just got too much to Denver, man. Before the season started, I was very worried about a couple things with this team, their offensive line and their coach, but I thought with quarterback and their improved defense and their improved skill position players, this Bronco team would be pretty good. Unfortunately for them, that has not happened. They didn't look like the better team at all in their game against Tennessee. They had many chances to win and still couldn't capitalize. They then lose to Pittsburgh, and it's unfortunate because as banged up as Denver is, that's as healthy as Tampa is. Tampa is fully healthy now that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are both on track to play. While keep in mind, the Broncos are down, their big three of Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, and Von Miller, but Jawan James opted out, Philip Lindsay isn't playing, and AJ Bouye is hurt. And Jeff Driscoll is the quarterback. I just don't know where exactly you could go from here if you're Denver. I also don't trust their coaching at all. And as disappointing as this is, Denver, they look to me like the trajectory towards a 5-11, 4-12 team. And if that's the case, I think Vic Fangio deserves to be fired because this team should be much better. I didn't think much of Tampa Bay and their performance last week, mostly because it was against Carolina. I don't really know how much stock you're able to put in that kind of game, but Brady looked better. If he could do this on the road in Denver, tough place to play, maybe I'll feel a little better. But right now, I would pick Tampa Bay to win the NFC South, but it's just because I don't have any confidence at all in the three other teams, not because I think there's some kind of great overachieving a football team. But I think Tampa Bay wins, and I think they cover. They just look like, to me, the more healthy team in this one. The next 4 o'clock game, how about the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys heading to Seattle to take on the 2-0 Seattle Seahawks? Right now, Seattle opens as a 5-point favorite. And the Seahawks, they barely covered last week against New England. And the thing is, Dallas last week was very close to being the top story on everyone's talk radio show. I think this week it was a combination of some things. You could talk about the Falcons' collapse like we did. You could talk about, the Raiders and how well they played on Monday night. You could talk about the Patriots and the Seahawks. But I think if Dallas would have lost to Atlanta last week, especially the way everyone was bashing Mike McCarthy the week before, this would have just been another perfect week to do it because Dallas did not come ready to play at all on Sunday, and it looked very Jason Garrett-ish to me. And the bottom line is, there's no way I'm picking a Mike McCarthy coached Cowboy team to go into Seattle and win. I just trust Russell Wilson too much. I don't trust the Cowboys that much. And I just love Seattle, man, the way they're playing. Obviously, you're going to want to see their defense be a little better. I think Dallas is going to be able to score in this game, but I trust Russell Wilson to make the big play more than Dak Prescott. I do trust Seattle's defense more than Dallas. I know Seattle's defense isn't great, but neither is Dallas's. Matt Ryan just carved them up last week. Jared Goff carved them up the week before. I think Seattle covers here as well. I think they win it 32-24. You guys know I'm just not a big Cowboy fan, and there's no way I'm ever going to be picking them to go into Seattle and win. How about this one? Sunday Night Football. The 2-0 Green Bay Packers head to New Orleans to take on the 1-1 New Orleans Saints. And I got to be honest here. This line makes no sense to me. I understand the game's in New Orleans, but this game should be a pick'em. And I got to be honest, I love the Packers to win this game outright on Sunday Night Football. You guys know how I feel about the Saints. I think Aaron Rodgers is playing much better football right now. The Saints have a solid running game, but so do Green Bay. And I think the Packers defense right now straight up is better than the Saints defense. I was impressed with the way they played on Sunday against Detroit. I don't trust the Saints at all right now. I don't trust their quarterback at all right now. And simply put it, I love Green Bay, man. I love the way they're playing. I think right now, them and Seattle would be the two teams that I would predict to meet in the NFC Championship game in a rematch of last year's playoff matchup. And I love Green Bay to win and cover the spread on Sunday night to beat the Saints. Monday Night Football. How about the 2-0 Kansas City Chiefs taking on the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens in what could be the biggest matchup of the season so far? The NFL's two best teams. And the Ravens are laying 3.5 points against the Super Bowl champs. And I got to be honest with you here. I like the Chiefs to cover and to win outright. As good as the Ravens have looked in their first two games, I just like the Chiefs better. I like their quarterback better, and I can't see Patrick Mahomes playing poorly 2 weeks in a row. I think Baltimore's defense is a smidge overrated. I know they've been good so far this year, and they played pretty well last week and in week 1 against Cleveland. But at the same time, when you look at the way Kansas City's offense has looked so far, it's been pretty good. They could really play, obviously, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and on Monday Night Football in such a big game, Mahomes also has beaten Lamar Jackson a couple times throughout his career. I hope that continues. And I like Kansas City to beat Baltimore outright. So as good as the games are Monday night and Sunday night, I have both underdogs winning in those 2 games. I have Green Bay and Kansas City winning in those 2 games. So it should be a phenomenal weekend of football. And really looking forward to it. And those are the week 3 picks.